All right, here we go. Welcome, everybody. Thank you all for joining us tonight for our second Trout Routes Masterclass of the month. This one we are super excited is a more topical class. This one we are focusing on gear organization with the co-founders from Yakoda Supply Company out in Colorado. So just a couple housekeeping things as people are joining so that we can get started right away. Just as a reminder, your video and your sound are off. So if you haven't joined us before, just know that if you've got dogs running around, kids running around, whatever it might be, we can't see you, we can't hear you. You're all good to go there. And we've got two, if you look down on the bottom part of Zoom here, you can see there's a chat and a QA section. That chat, let's make sure we utilize that portion to chime in where you're joining us from tonight. And that Q&A section, put any of those questions that you might want kind of slotted for the end of class tonight over there. Just makes it easier for us to kind of keep track of things. But we would love to know where you all are joining us from, so make sure to drop those in the chat. And any other just kind of back and forth conversations can go there as well. Last thing I wanted to mention is if you are for the Trout Routes crew, if you are going to be, if you live in Montana or Colorado, I should say, we are going to be traveling out to you. We're going to be in Bozeman next week at the F3T showing, and then we will also be at the Fly Fishing show in Denver the following week. And I know the Yakoda team will be there as well. We actually are right across the aisle from each other, which we are all excited about, I know. So make sure you come see all of us at the Denver Fly Fishing show if you're out there for that. So as you can see tonight, though, I'm not alone. Tonight I'm joined by Trout Routes' own Eric Johnson, yet again, as well as Yakoda co-founders Justin Fuller and Jason Faerman. So I'm going to pass it off to Eric to kind of take us away. But thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. We're really excited to chat gear organization. I know myself could utilize some of that this winter and spring. So
Thank you, Matt. It's great to be back. I'm thrilled to be joining you tonight with the co-founders here of Yakoda. We are indeed going to be talking some strategies for gear org and some things we can do here in the off season to help get everyone sorted out for the upcoming season. But first of all, I would just like to welcome and say thank you to Justin and Jason. Thank you guys for joining us tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate the opportunity.
We have had a chance to connect in a couple of different capacities, but I think we first bumped into each other almost a year ago at a fly show out in Colorado last year. And it was really cool to see all the things that you guys are bringing to the table as far as gear, apparel, flies. We're going to get into all of that, but I wanted to kind of kick off the conversation tonight by just asking you guys a little bit about what your fly fishing background is. How did you guys get into fly fishing? And maybe what were some of those earliest memories for you that you can think of?
Hold on. Hey everybody, I'm Justin. I grew up in Texas, so my earliest memories are fishing with my grandpa at my uncle's lake house really early on. Did a lot of bass fishing growing up, catfish, that kind of stuff. Was pretty passionate about bass fishing in high school, in college, and lots of small stock ponds and lakes, and then some really great bass fishing like in East Texas. Moved to Colorado about 25 years ago in my early 20s, and had plans to fly fish, but didn't really get around to it for a few years. Probably picked up a fly rod for the first time in my kind of like my mid 20s, and was really lucky to be friends with the guy that owns the local fly shop before I got into fly fishing. And so
Nice.
his brother actually kind of took me under his wing and taught me how to fish. And turns out that ends up being the shop that I met Jason through. But we're really lucky to live in a place where we have access to a lot of great trout fishing. So spent a lot of time doing it on my own and with friends, and then now through Yakoda. So
Great. And Jason, how about you?
Yeah. Hey, wow, fishing is one of the earliest memories I have as a kid. I started fishing with my great grandfather.
Oh, wow.
I'm a New Yorker, so more like bait and tackle type fishing. We were fishing on like Long Island Sound, and I remember shortly thereafterwards, I was 6 the first time I went with him. He passed away a couple years later, and I inherited like all of his gear, and it just became like my thing.
Cool.
We moved up to upstate New York, and that's about 60 miles north of the city, in a really nice agricultural area with lots of glacial lakes and ponds and rivers and streams, of course. Great bass fishing, great panfish fishing. And around, I don't know, I was like 12 or 13, I wound up buying a popper set, like build your own poppers, and I got
Okay.
a rod with it. And the focus was, to catch bass with that thing.
Mm.
And I definitely tied up some like absolutely terrible poppers. They worked though. The bass did not care.
Yeah.
And I remember that rod got like abused. I mean, that was the time when like BMX bikes were new and stuff. And I'm like, rolling around their neighborhood, like sometimes taking, a bike ride, it would take, mile and a half to get to a creek or so. And eventually I think that thing got like stuck in my spokes and broke at some point or another. But I had a lot of fun, and it was, I guess, foreboding for what was to come for the future. I moved out to Colorado in 1996, and although I didn't do much trout fishing back in New York, when I got here, it was one of the first things that I knew that I was going to do. I remember going to a pawn shop up in Summit County and buying a St. Croix Imperial fly rod for like $150, and got set up and went fishing. And one of the first like real fish I ever caught, big ones that is, was a huge rainbow on the frying pan. And this is probably like 1998, like a 22-inch fish. And I was like immediately just drawn in. There was no going back at that point.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. I love hearing everyone's sort of backstory, because I think there are so many different avenues to get involved in fly fishing, and it doesn't have to be the same for everybody. And so it's really cool to hear that from both of you. I want to fast forward quite a bit, because I know there's a little bit of interesting history with you guys getting connected originally, and sort of the jumping off point for what ultimately becomes Yakoda Supply. So can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Sure. Well, Justin's already mentioned that. We both met at Rocky Mountain Anglers in Boulder, Colorado. Really well-known shop if you know the area. And Justin was friends with Randy. I was friends with Randy. We had different reasons to be friends with him. And we were, it was a chip that Randy had put together for a bunch of his friends and customers of the shop, where he brought like, I don't know, I can't remember. It was like 12 to 16 people up to Wyoming to go fish the mile. Justin and I rode with Randy, so we were in a car for the next 3.5 days together. We roomed together. We had a lot of similarities. Both of our spouses' names were Julie. We both have 13-year-old kids. At that time, they were much younger. They were fun. And we just kind of hit it off. There was a bromance happened.
Yeah, yeah,
You know,
that'll happen to you when you're stuck in the car with somebody for a little bit too long.
yeah.
That's fantastic. We're going to get into some of probably the inspirations on that trip, but I know that you guys are calling in from your actual retail location. So I wanted to touch on that a little bit. I believe you guys are in Louisville, Colorado. But can you remind me when you opened up that space, and just maybe a little bit about what you guys have going on there?
Yeah, for sure. We started the company in Boulder, which is about 4 miles that way. We're in Louisville now. Anybody who's familiar with the area, there's a bunch of small towns that are just all sort of connected here in Boulder County, on the Front Range. And we moved in here about 2.5 years ago. We were looking for some space. There's a whole backstory. When this was kind of a side hustle, we were operating out of Jason's office, and we kind of outgrew it.
We first started in Justin's office, though.
Started in my design studio in Boulder, Jason's office.
Okay, cool.
He couldn't have clients over anymore because we had too much stuff, started looking for a spot. Ended up in Louisville at this old auto body shop, kind of this compound where they had kind of repurposed it and rezoned it. So this place was a mess when we first saw it, but took about a year to get in. They cleaned it up and did a really nice build out for us. And so, yeah, we're kind of sitting in our office here, but the space is kind of divided up into thirds. We've got a retail shop on the other side of this wall behind the camera. It's kind of like walking into our website. We have a lot of products, but they don't take up a ton of space when they're all kind of in the same place. So it's a great place for customers and fly shop owners and stuff to come kind of see everything in one place. We have a lot of customers that can pick up their online orders and stuff here as well. And then we have back of house. We fulfill, we do a lot of business online. So a lot of our business is online. So we fulfill all of that stuff here. We make a lot of our products here, or assemble a lot of our products here. So we can talk about some of that later. A lot of our products are made just a few miles from here. So yeah, we're really lucky to have found a spot where we can kind of have everything under one roof and all be here together. Every
Right
day.
on. That's excellent. Before we get too much further, Matt, I'm going to ask you to drop in that link of the product collection page that these guys put together for us for this evening. So if you're on the chat, take a look at that if you want to get an idea of some of the things we're going to dive into. But you guys have been designing gear for quite some time, and at this point you're offering packs, gear storage, fly storage, flies themselves. But I want to bring us back a little bit to that first trip that you both went on, and maybe some of the ideas that started to come out of that. But as we start thinking about gear organization in general, I'd love to know about what some of the challenges you guys were encountering on your own fishing adventures, or as you guys started fishing together, and how you sort of took those challenges and ideas and started directing them into some actual product design.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because talking about that first product kind of gets us right into the meat of the conversation.
Yeah.
Like Jason said, we had a lot in common. We both had ideas. I'd been working with Randy. I'm a graphic designer. So I've been working with Randy on some stuff for the shop, hats and stickers and stuff. And kind of had this sort of half an idea about, I had a big Tupperware bin in my car and like a carpet scrap to change into my waders, and it would get really dirty and smelly. And when it wasn't being used for fishing, it was just taking up space. And I, had been using various things to try to solve that problem. And really it's just about, where do you keep all this stuff, keep it handy, keep it organized, keep it from getting kind of nasty. And so our first product, which we'll pull up and walk everybody through here in a minute, it's called the Gear Transport. It's a super simple, big 95-liter carry-all bag that's really simply constructed. And that kind of goes back to the fact that, neither of us are product designers by trade or by education. So it's still kind of a philosophy that, I think is woven through all of our products, that everything's just super simple. Simply constructed, not a lot of special, extra features or things that can really go wrong, which is kind of nice, when you're depending on a piece of gear, especially, when you get on the water. So yeah, that first product was really just about staying organized. And then it turns out that, through the entire product line, even down to the smallest product, that's kind of like the common element of all the stuff that we make. So
Yeah, totally. That's a really good call out. I was going through some of my own gear this week and shooting a couple of videos for our social accounts, and I was a little taken aback, I'll be honest with you, at how much stuff I was able to find, not only in my truck, but in the garage and in the house and on my desk. I mean, it ends up everywhere. And so I think that's a really good point to make as we're talking about some of these reorganizational strategies. I think one of the first things that helped me just this week even was, let's take stock of everything that we've got going on. I think there's an awful lot more sometimes that people are even aware of. Was that something that you guys kind of encountered that led to the gear transport, or was it really just born out of trying to find some better ways to keep all these things housed in a central location?
Yeah, I don't think like when Justin came up with the idea for the bag that we had really envisioned, the collection of products that would become and come after the gear transport. It's its own ecosystem, and a lot of what we've designed are ways to help us get out of the house quickly. And admittedly, at that time, our kids were young and our wives needed us around as much as possible. So it was really important to have something that would have our gear staged. So that way, when we're like, hey, let's get out and go fish for a couple hours, like I didn't have to spend a half hour or an hour, or even more than that, to get my stuff together. And it became just a vessel to manage things appropriately. One of the things that you had asked prior, and Justin kind of started talking about it, is like, how did we come to the place that we are with how we design things? And quite frankly, like everyone's had that same issue when they're on the water, where they're using a piece of equipment, something about it drives them nuts. And they're like, I wish this was different so that it suited my needs better. And that's really all that we've done with our product line is find pain points in existing stuff, adjust it to our needs, because we have a feeling that a lot of people are out there experiencing the same thing, and keep it simple. Invariably, like, we created a very light gear collection by virtue of the materials that we use, and weight super important when you're on the trail for a long day, or you're, covering a lot of miles when you're, on the river. And that wasn't intentional at all, but it was just how it worked out, which was a great byproduct
That's
of.
kind of a nice bonus for sure.
But yeah, the gear transport is, for us, especially considering where we live, where the Rocky Mountains, the weather can change so quickly, and you really have to be prepared for everything here. There's no place, most places in America where you're going to go fish, you're going to load up in your garage, you're going to go drive to the water, and when you get to the water, you have to basically have something to, pull all of your gear out of. And, there were a lot of other products on the market that we saw, and drew inspiration from, but none of them really resonated with us, in the sense that, like, after you fish in the middle of summer and all your gear is wet, and you change out of it and you throw it in a zippered bag, and you leave that in your car for an extended period of time, your stuff's not going to smell nice. It's going to be kind of a biohazard in there. And the simplicity of the gear transport is kind of form and function to avoid those scenarios altogether, in addition to creating a product that when you open it fully, you can see everything inside of it. So it's very easy to identify and pick out specific pieces of gear or as you need. So,
yeah, I mean, I think Jason's touched on it, but really, what we do is about, I think for us, the 99% of the time we go fishing, a friend's picking you up. Hopefully it's super early in the morning and you've got the full day ahead of you. Like Jason said, you don't want to be digging around in your garage at 4:30 in the morning looking for something. Everything's right there. To Eric's point, yeah, once or twice or 5 times a year, you dump this thing out on your garage floor and you lay everything out and you shake the dirt out of the bottom and you put everything back in, and it forces you to kind of take stock of your gear, kind of check in on stuff. And I think that's something you wanted to touch on too, is kind of like using this time of the year to get organized for the rest of the year. But our products are made to last forever. Like we'll replace or fix anything that goes wrong with them from now on. We fortunately don't have to do that very often. But they're not, they're not for that 1%, or maybe hopefully if you're lucky 3% of the time, where you need highly technical gear. It's super rugged functional stuff, and if it gets wet, it'll dry out. You know what I mean? Like, there's not a lot of stuff that you put in your pack these days that can't stand a little bit of water. Your sandwich getting wet is probably the worst thing that can happen. So we don't put waterproof zippers on things that drive up the retail price of an item by $100, and that have to get greased up a few times a year, and that can break and stuff. So by virtue of just honestly at the beginning not really knowing what we were doing, we didn't have access to a bunch of crazy materials and techniques, and weren't trying to outdo our coworkers or some other company. We were just kind of doing things the way we knew how. So it's resulted in just a really straightforward, simple lineup of stuff, I think.
Yeah, totally. I think that's great. What I'm hearing really is I need to maybe take a few steps back, and I'm probably overthinking some of my gear strategies, but really when it comes down to it, I think number one, having a central location for the majority of your stuff, at least the things that you're using most of the time, is probably key number one. And then key number two is everything's going to get wet. There's nothing you can really do about it, but if you can put together some sort of kit, know that it's going to be wet, and make sure that you have some way to keep some airflow going.
And the worst thing that can happen, right, is you've got your T-zip waterproof zipper 95% or 99% of the way zipped up. You go underwater, that thing fills water. There's no way for the water to drain out. So all of a sudden you've got,
exactly.
And I mean, it's of course we all want to stay dry. You can turn a good day into a bad day real quick, especially if it's chilly out by getting wet. But we have ideas and plans, for the future for how to address some of that stuff. But for the first 8 years of this thing, that's just not something we've been super focused on.
Yeah, for sure.
With regards to organization, everyone has their way, right? Like there's no perfect way. And we tried to create a system that other people could adopt and use, to their benefit. And really all it does, for someone that wants to take a little bit of time, it just makes your day on the water better, because you'll be in a position where you forget things far less. And you're setting yourself up for success by knowing where all your stuff is, by having it staged properly. So I think we're at the point to show this thing, huh?
Yeah, sure.
So
Yeah,
this is
I would love to take a look. I know, and I was just going to throw something else in here real quick. Was I was listening to a couple of other podcasts that you guys have done, and one of the things that I kept coming up as a common theme was this sense of modularity, where these pieces and components are designed to do some pretty specific things for fly fishing, but that also means that they can do a ton of things
yeah.
also in fly fishing, but even completely outside of fly fishing. And I thought that was really, really thoughtful. So I want to make sure you guys can maybe touch on that a little bit as we
Yeah,
start to dig into the system here.
more of a focus on utility, utilitarian designs that allow the user to decide how they want to get the best use out of something. This bag, which we use for fishing and designed specifically for fishing, is a killer ski bag. There's a removable changing pad at the very, very bottom of it. And when you're in a muddy parking lot, like you don't want to be standing on your shoes, you want to stand on a pad. So same thing, right? You have wet ski clothes in here, they're not going to turn into a mess, they just stay open to see.
And this first pack here that you guys have on the table is the gear transport, right?
Yeah. So this is our flagship product, Justin's idea, the product that basically launched Yakoda.
Right.
It is a pretty massive 95-liter carryall. You'll probably drop, your jaws will drop when you see the amount of stuff that comes out of this thing, because it's full. But I'll start pulling some things out. There's products in here from other companies. This is an old like Patagonia Iron Forge tote that I keep all of my kind of fly boxes that you can see in there. So if we're at a body of water and there's some sort of hatch that starts happening and we don't have those flies, in our tins, like that's a great thing to go to pull out what we need. I always keep my share of layers in here. So I have my puffy vest, which is always a base layer that I put over like an R1 type layer, especially for cold weather fishing. Rain jacket, regular puffy hoodie, which everyone should have their own version of. We have our pack, the convertible utility pack, which can be used a few different ways, and we're going to talk about this one in some length. I've got my wading boots, of course, waders.
I wasn't sure if you had waders tucked in there, and I'm glad to see that they did make their way to the at some point.
Yeah, I mean, shoot, you can't fish in the cold without those. So, water bottle, of course. I've got some extra things in here, like I have a couple of different streamer stashes. I typically leave one in my gear transport. Try and flatten this so you can see in here a little bit better. I've got things like extra reel covers and a net holder. There's some snacks in here, some power bars and stuff. And the gear transport is a real big vessel, right? It holds a lot of stuff, which is great and also can be kind of a mess if you don't manage it properly. The little smuggler that we keep inside of it, which is also a super modular product that you could use for anything. Like we've attached this thing to backpacks before. I've put camera gear and attached it to the outside of a backpack. We put food in here, we put beer in here. Just use it however you see fit. But this is like one of the most important parts of the organization, at least for me personally. So I get burnt real easy from the sun. We live in high altitude, the sun's really strong here. And things that I don't want to have to think about when I have to get my gear ready exist and live inside of the smuggler. So I've got sunglasses, knit hat if need be, gloves, extra tippet depending on the size of the fish that we're targeting that day. I have an extra utility pouch, which is one of our products that you can attach anywhere to anything. This has some contraband in it. You're not allowed to see what's in there. There is in the front of this thing, I got electric hand warmer, sunscreen, a little skin food. I get dry hands pretty good. Koozies. There's some straps for my pack, for this pack, that I'm not currently using. I've got a couple other little things in here that are one of our old net covers for when we're kind of going through areas that are really bushy, so that the net doesn't get hung up in the branches and stuck there. And those are core items that, like, literally every time I go fishing, especially in the wintertime, like I need.
Yeah.
But
I want to pause there too, and just call that whole process out that you kind of were just outlining. You've got a lot of different pieces in front of you. I'm looking at, probably your everyday go-to with most of your fly fishing kit in it. I know you've got a box for flies, you've got some extra layers, but I think having that particular bag that has those kinds of peripheral things like sunscreen, like maybe a couple extra snack bars, those kinds of things that I usually spend that 30 minutes before I get out the door trying to track down because they're scattered all over the house or they're in the truck or I can't figure out where I put them. But having a dedicated spot for all that kind of stuff is huge and something that I hadn't really thought of until this conversation. That would save me a ton of time. And I love that idea, because not only does it keep those things at hand and you always know where to find them, but you don't have to waste that extra time trying to get all that figured out before you get out. Or they're the kinds of things that you wish you had when you're already on the water that you invariably left behind because you didn't think of it.
There's a couple of drop pockets on the inside of the gear transport that you can't see, but I'm sure if you go visit the product page for it, you'll easily see them. If you're in your buddy's car, you're going to toss your car keys in there and your wallet and stuff like that. But yeah, that's the core stuff. I mean, then we get into the convertible pack, which is really like our workhorse products for people, whether they're hiking with it or whether they're attaching it to their wader straps, which is how I like to use or have been using it frequently. And there's a few different ways. And we spent a lot of time putting this together. It's super, super cool what it can do. But it's really like what's inside of it that makes a really positive difference for people on the water, because you can easily identify what's in it and where things are at.
Sure.
And you spent the time kind of organizing it and putting it together. It just makes your life so much easier. So as a somewhat like OCD person who likes to think things through, like there's very intentional placement for where things are at. So we put, a mesh pocket here on the outside so that you could have quick access to your indicators and to your weight. And then a flip up pocket where you would typically store things like, your floatant, whether you typically carry like a desiccant or a liquid floatant or both of those.
Yeah.
We were up in Wyoming recently, so there's huevos in there. Floating.
Tip holder.
Yeah, tippet holder on the outside, more of a minimalist approach, if you will. Not that there isn't a need to carry 6 spools of tippet, but when you know the size of the fish that you're going to be targeting, all you really need is 2-3 spools of tippet max, which is why the other spools existed inside of my smuggler.
Right.
So
Yeah.
if we go to a spot that has smaller fish, I can switch out and I can put, 5, 6, and 7X on. Last time I went fishing, I was up in Wyoming and I've got 1, 2, and 3X in here. So those are the fun fish to catch.
Nice.
Anything that I missed there?
So, I mean, there's some extra molly straps. There's, a lot of things you can do with this if you like to attach things. This will also go inside the gear transport. So there are some really simple square carabiners that we can talk about in a minute why we chose those, but they're all made to sit inside the gear transport. So you could have one of these hanging in there as well, across from your smuggler, and add more organization.
Yeah, that's awesome. This was one of those pieces that I know came up on a couple of other conversations that I was listening into that comes to mind when I think of something that you could take with you well outside of the water. It's something that you can bring with you on a hike, would transfer really easily, maybe even a mountain biking pack. I could imagine someone using it for something like that. Great, travel bag.
Yeah, it's made for fly fishing. because that's how we use it, but I use one when I travel.
Yeah.
Use one, like, yeah.
Yeah.
It's bring it to
Well,
concert small.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I know that this is also one of those pieces that you designed with lots of different functionality in mind, just with how you're carrying it and how you're able to access it. So maybe we can think about that a little bit, as maybe something else for us to be thinking about as we're looking at our existing fly fishing kit and ways that we might be able to elevate that this off season by consolidating and then finding some pieces that are going to work for us in a number of different ways.
Most people have been fishing for a long time have probably owned a hip pack
Mhm.
and at least one other type of way to attach your stuff to your body. I mean,
Yeah.
you can use a vest, you can use a hip pack, you can use a chest pack, you can use a sling. The cool thing about this is that it does 3 of those 4 things. It doesn't turn into a vest, but primarily,
That maybe that's the next version. It would be pretty sweet
Yeah.
if it did.
primarily worn as a hip pack, which I'm going to put one on and show you guys just a real simple feature that we like, but it can also be worn as a chest pack, whether you attach it to your waders, and that's kind of where those square carabiners come in. Again, super simple feature that just clips nicely into the kind of loop that all the waders have.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And is that square also maybe a little bit more like it doesn't get hung up on the straps as much, or it might be easier to attach on those wider
Yeah, they're
straps?
rectangular, so the 2 different sizes of the carabiners themselves
Gotcha. Okay.
can fit a narrow wader strap, like things like the Patagonia ultralight waders.
Yeah.
Forget them, but it's those packable ones that weigh hardly anything.
Yep.
And then if you turn it long ways, then it's 1.5 inches, which accommodates pretty much every wader strap that's
Sure.
out there, which is,
Okay.
again, Patagonia straps like these guys are 1.5 inches over here.
Yep.
And
Got
so
it.
are Sims and so are Reddington.
Yep.
So
But yeah, the main feature for the hip pack use case that, is that thing that drives us crazy. Won't name any names. We own products from a lot of different brands that we love for different reasons that are great, especially if you're saltwater fishing or something like that. But the fixed belt on a hip pack can be a real pain because you have to wrench the whole bag around to get inside of it. And then you're usually yanking on a big waterproof zipper. And depending on if you're left-handed or right-handed, that zipper only goes one way. We're both left-handed, so you run into issues like that sometimes. But the feature that I think we all like the best about the hip pack is that the belt is just a pass-through belt. So I can slide this whole bag around on my
great.
waist without having to turn the entire thing and
Yeah.
bring that around with me and stuff like that. So if I need to get into the pack really quickly, it's all right here. The zipper goes both ways. Again, there's a super simple feature that it just doesn't have a one-way zipper in it.
Yeah. I carry a hip pack with me when I'm on the water, and that seems like such a simple, adjustment into product design that you've made with this pack. But I encounter that every single time I swivel that thing around, and I'm almost always pulling it on the wrong side. Like I'm trying to grab my net that's attached on this side, but I pull it around the wrong way or something, and that's incredibly smart.
We have a lot of customers that like to use their own belts, whether it's a slightly heavier, like tactical style belt or some weighting belt that they really like. So it allows you to change that component out. And, we may or may not be working on like our own version of that, right? Where it's an interchangeable piece across multiple products, because we have other packs that are smaller than this one that have belt loops in the back as well. And that's not the primary use case for those. Those are more typically made specifically for your waders or to attach to your backpack, but they have the belt loops in case you want to wear them around your waist.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
I think when we looked at all the different packs that were out there, the one thing that was constant was that they were all single-use products. And with no ability to adapt or typically change into another form of use. And for us as, people that like to get more than one use out of something, like that was really important to us to kind of bake those features into the design so that, I could use it my way, Justin can use it his way, and Eric can use it your way.
Yeah.
And, to be able to take a pack that was designed specifically for fishing, but to be able to use it out, in public is also a huge benefit. Whereas, most waterproof packs, you're probably not gonna load that thing up and go,
Right.
walk around town or whatever. So,
Yeah.
one of the things that's super cool, the gray pack that Justin had on and this one, these are much older. I think this is like first or second run. We've had them for a while. So one of the features that's really neat about them, the newer packs have a reverse coil zipper on it, which beads water, doesn't allow water to kind of sit through or go through like that big zipper that you can probably see here. What we like is things that adapt quickly, and the belt loops on the back of this are designed as such where in really a matter of seconds, I could pull this belt right off of it and set this thing up a different way, and this whole thing pulls
Gotcha.
off, which, you know, kind of highlights its adaptability. Now, I shoot a lot of our photographs for us when we're out in the field, and most of the time I'll have, you know, a normal sized backpack on. This is a Patagonia pack, as you can see, and there's a, you know, molly strap here. So most of the time when I'm hiking, you know, if we're leaving the car, my pack is actually attached to these molly straps.
Oh, sure.
Get to
Right.
where we're going to actually start fishing, I literally just remove this in seconds and throw it on my wader straps, and I'm kind of like good to go. And then like my camera gear, my water and food will live in here.
Yeah.
Inside of this guy, we've got a bunch of kind of specifically designed pockets for organization and stuff that, like, our fly tin has become a unit of measure. I like maintaining like a few different versions of tins in my bags. This is a high country box. It specifically has tons of chrominids and leeches and damselfly patterns. This is kind of like a general junk box that most tailwaters that I bring it to, like all those flies are going to be in here. And I spent a fair amount of time loading these things up and building them out. Like,
Oh yeah.
they're good
Yeah.
to look at, you know, but I know what everything's in here.
I've been working on this one
Oh, nice.
recently. But no, I think that's another really excellent call out is taking some time, especially now when we might not be on the water, to go through all these boxes. I don't have any more in front of me, but I have like a half dozen just in my main gear tote that lives in the truck. But most of them are completely disorganized, and I pick and choose and I put them in another box and I bring those with me somewhere. But if I could take some time to kind of go through and evaluate not only what flies I have and what I might be missing, but then reorganize them a little bit so that I've got, like you said, a box for those tailwaters. I've got a box for nymphs. I've got a box for dries, whatever categories you're fishing throughout the year that makes sense to you.
Sure.
I think is another excellent idea for us to consider for off season.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's going to approach that differently, right? Some people like to organize by bug or type of water. And we fish a lot just in really close by. So like a box that's just for South Boulder Creek and Boulder Creek, those are tiny little tailwaters that are the place to fish most often. So just, you might only need a fly box, a pair of nippers,
Right.
you know, and that's my favorite kind of fishing, honestly. But just knowing that you can grab that one box, that's like Jason said, the color coding is kind of cool too. You just know that the green box is the creek box, you know.
Yeah, which actually it is the creek box.
Nice, nice.
So yeah, there's a, you know, one of the points, one of the reasons we do the fly tins, first off, they're incredibly light and you can pack a ton of bugs in them. Of empty fly tin weighs less than 2 ounces and typically fits in like a shirt pocket, depending on the size of the pocket itself. But it's a great way to visually identify the types of bugs that are in it. And if you color code your boxes and you kind of have like a library of tins, you know, if you're going to go carp fishing, you have a carp box. And if you're going to chase, you know, wipers, which is a white bass, striped bass that, you know, hammers bait fish in the Colorado reservoirs out here in springtime, you just grab that one single box. And I don't, you know, I've taken the time, as Justin has as well, to set all these systems up so that way when it's actually time to go fishing, it's just time to go fishing. There's no more figuring out where my stuff is. So to kind of go, you know, back to the whole organization of the bag and stuff, like stuff that lives, and I always make sure that I return them back into my convertible pack or my nippers, you know, on my lanyard. Like, it lives in here 100% of the time. I never have to think of where those are at or where I left them last. I always carry my utility wallet in here, which carries excess, you know, leaders, and then also, most importantly, my fishing license to both Colorado and Wyoming. I never have to think of where it is. Like, I always know it's here. And if I get to a spot where like I've stripped down my setup and I'm gonna wet wade, all I need to bring is this one thing. And then I have all my leaders in here. I actually have a couple of extra indicators in the mesh pocket in the back,
Nice.
but my license is there, which is most important. You know, libations on the water, you always need that in there. But that's really it. I mean, it's a real simple setup with really nice pockets, so that people can kind of set their own style up. It's not a huge pack in terms of its size, but what it lacks in size, it makes up for an organization and
Sure.
create a system for people to have a great day on the water. But it does take a little bit of planning and foresight.
Yeah, absolutely. I think those all have been fantastic ideas just of us to consider here in the off season. I know we did have a question that came through that was about drying out some flies, and maybe this was specific to streamers. I'm not quite sure. Sorry, Matt, I'm kind of jumping ahead of you here a little bit. But I did see one of those streamer stashes in there, and I know we've touched on the fly tins that you guys do, but I wanted to throw this out for a couple of reasons. One, because we've got a question that I want you all to answer on this. But two, because I've been playing around with one of these as well, and this is really the first time that I've dug into using this kind of system for storing my streamers in particular. And I'll admit, I was a bit of a non-believer. I wasn't sure it was really going to work until I tried to jam this thing full, and it held twice as many flies as I thought it was going to. And it kept them separated and it kept them dry. So just in terms of other strategies for off season, I think maybe thinking creatively or thinking outside of what your historic system has been is another helpful tip for us to consider. I mean, I would not probably have picked one of these up until I chatted with you guys. And I gave it a shot, and it ended up kind of changing the way that I organize what otherwise would have been a huge box in my fly pack, and now it rolls up to, the size of a like mini burrito.
To answer that question specifically, yeah, I'm glad you've gotten some use out of it. To answer that question specifically, it's cool because it gives us a chance to talk about some of the materials, but what the secret sauce in any good streamer wallet, and this is modeled after, a style of streamer storage. It's been around for 100 years. Like,
Yeah.
you might see one of these in your grandfather's, fishing collection. We didn't reinvent the wheel in terms of the form factor. But it uses some modern materials like the X Pack that we use for other products. It's got like this kind of catcher's mitt sort of pocket behind it. These hooks are big and heavy, but this is Texas shearling wool, so it's got the hide, and on the backside you're not going to stick yourself.
Yeah.
You really get in there and kind of manhandle these flies and pull these big hooks out without hurting yourself.
Yeah.
And then that Texas shearling wool is just like totally natural, antimicrobial.
Right.
Water absorbent material. So you can confidently stick wet streamers back in here, roll this thing up, and it's going to absorb all of that water. Now, we live in a really dry place, right? So we don't worry too much about things sitting around. Things dry out really quickly here. And yeah, if you live, Northern California or on the East Coast somewhere, you might have to think a little bit more about opening this thing up when you get home and letting it dry out. If a fly box falls in the water here, people always ask, are fly boxes waterproof? They're not. Because they're not made out of heavy polycarbonate, plastic with magnets and stuff. If a fly box gets wet, at least in Colorado, you take it back at the end of the day, you open it up and throw it on the dash of your car when you're driving home, and it's totally dry. So, we're lucky in that regard. But in terms of keeping flies dry, like this material, because of its just natural qualities, does the trick. And we have a little fly patch. I don't see one around here, but it's made out of the same material. We try to use all of our scrap materials, so the fly patch is literally like that last 1% of material. But you can
cool.
the carabiner, you can hang it on your waders, you can put it on the outside of your pack. Smaller version of this pack has one kind of built into it, and it's it's not a place you want to store barbless hooks for long periods of time. But it's a great place to stick a hook when you're about to change out your rig, or to put the fly that you just took off for a few minutes while it dries out before you put it back in your pack. So yeah. And the reason, I mentioned the Texas shearling, like something that's really important to us is that all this stuff, everything we've shown you, with the exception of, like the fly tins, are made about 2 miles this way. So we're in Boulder County. It's all cut and sewn here. X Packs and American made material that Jason mentioned is super lightweight. And that's kind of what lets us stand behind our products. Not only are they're made with good materials, they're made by people who are really good at what they do. our partners that sew the stuff for us. And then if something breaks or doesn't work, you can send it back to us and we'll take it literally to the person that made it and have it fixed for you and send it back to you. So
We've done that many times with some of our packs, the smaller pack, the utility pack. One thing, Eric, that I think is really important to note, especially for the reasons that you probably didn't think the streamer stash would be a good fit for your needs. Space is super valuable for us. Anytime we're,
Yeah.
away from, our cars or our homes where space isn't an option. This thing is super space efficient. And yes, I have, a streamer case like pretty much everyone else, a boat box that's full of streamers. But to put that in a pack is completely ridiculous. And
Yeah.
although I've seen people do that,
Yeah.
this thing rolls up nice and tidy. It's small, it's lightweight. Like I can stick this thing in a pocket, in my waiter pockets. It fits perfectly in our gear transport, and it's like it just doesn't weigh anything, and it
Yeah.
doesn't take up a ton of space. But still, like there's at least 30 streamers in here.
Right.
This one has full-size streamers. That blue one, I mean, both of these things are like maybe 4 years old at this point. And you can kind of see how this stuff wears. I typically keep like mini Gangas and mini streamers in this one, which is why I have the two colors just to identify them quickly. But yeah, and it kind of goes back once again, like I've organized in my thought process. If I'm going to fish a small creek and I know I'm going to use small streamers, like I got to grab the blue streamer stash. If we're going to go fish, the Colorado or the Blue River, I'm going to grab, the black multicam one because it's got bigger selections in it.
Excellent. Yeah, I think that's great. Another awesome reminder of that color coordinating technique of being able to very quickly and easily identify what is where and which things you need to make sure you're grabbing for whatever day you got on the water.
Yeah. As a person who's colorblind too, like I like bright colors because it's easy for me to see them.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, we have covered an awful lot. One last piece I wanted to just touch on briefly before we get to some of the Q&As here is it's not just packs and storage that we're thinking about in the off season. We're also thinking about doing maybe a little bit of gear maintenance. And I know you guys offer a couple of things to help keep things fresh and fully functional. And so I want to touch on a couple of those items. One of the things that I have had the misfortune of replacing have been boot laces. And I know that's something that you guys are very proud of offering. Let's touch on those and maybe a couple of those other smaller things that might be really easy fill-ins for some gear that might be wearing out or it has worn out and it needs to be replaced this year.
totally. Yeah, I think we're proud of the laces because again, it's like the simplest
Totally.
on the planet. But there's nothing more frustrating than, like you said, at the worst possible time when you're farthest away from your car, where you probably don't have an extra pair of boot laces anyway, and you haven't even started fishing yet, and you go tighten your boots up and they blow out. So I'm sure most people who fished a fair amount, more than 50 days in their life in the same pair of boots, have had this experience. The way normal laces work, they're just not made to get wet and dry, hot and cold. Lots of pressure, metal eyelets in the boots. So one of the very first products we came out with, we call them guide laces. This pair of Reddington boots has a super fresh pair of laces in them, but they're, again, like American made material. And we actually make these here, so we cut them to length.
Oh,
There's
cool.
lengths depending on which boot you have. Hand stamp these metal aglets on the end. So the first thing that's going to fail on a pair of laces, typically we've all had tennis shoes, like is that cheap kind of shrink wrap plastic aglet on the end. So makes it really hard if the lace comes out of an eyelet to get it back through. And then eventually, because most shoelaces or boot laces have like a solid core in the middle, that's what makes them kind of round. There's an extra piece of material in there that rubs up against the outer sheath and rubs up against that metal and just creates and a failure point. So these laces are flat, they're coreless, which actually makes them stay tied a little bit better. And the average pair of boot laces, if you're fishing, at least here in Colorado, probably lasts about 50 days on the water if you're lucky. We've got friends who are guides who have used the same pair of laces on like 4 or 5 pairs of boots at this point. So these people are
cool.
Days on them. And it makes us happy to be able to sell a product for $11 that's still $4 or $5 cheaper than that pair of boots that blew out on your original pair or pair of laces that blew out on your original pair of boots from the same from the people that made your boots. And it gives, it just gives people a chance to try something that we make that is not a crazy, investment. And I think a lot of people, that is the most popular product that people try first. And we love that because it gives people a chance to realize that, we're serious about quality.
Yeah.
You don't have to dive in to the convertible pack right away if you don't want to. They
Mhm.
come in
Yeah.
some fun colors. These are kind of like Rasta colors. We call them trichroma. Jason's got the kind of salmon colored lanyard. So our
Oh,
lanyard
yeah.
our laces. But if
Mhm.
you're a little more
Okay.
conservative, you can get some grays and browns and greens too.
Yeah.
So that's one thing I think you should just check every winter. Probably just change your laces. If you buy a pair of guide laces, you don't need to do that every single winter, but it's always,
You don't.
I mean, then you can have a backup pair too. And something you should just
This,
keep in your backpack.
this pair of boots and laces are 5 years old around that point. I'll tell you that the laces look far better than the boot does. I've
That's
lost,
awesome.
spots where you can put your cleats into. Like I've had to goo on the material fraying and falling
Yeah.
apart. The sole has started to come off. The laces will definitely get moved over to another pair of boots. I've got like 3 different pair of wading boots. These are the ones I typically wear in the winter because I like to size up so that my feet stay warmer.
Yep.
But I would say that these boots probably have 400 plus days of winter fishing in them,
Wow.
and the laces look literally brand new.
Yeah, that's
Just
awesome.
like Justin was saying, like those metal tips, the aglets themselves, sure, they're gonna get a little bit of wear from rubbing up on rocks and rubbing under your waders, the cuff on them at least, but metal's still there. It hasn't fallen apart, and they're bomber. They last for forever. I've literally never broken a pair of our laces, and I've fished thousands of days in them.
Nice.
Pairs of boots.
Yeah, that's awesome. Very cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think fly organization is a big one in the wintertime. You got plenty of time to sit around and tie flies. That means you got time to organize your fly boxes. Our nippers, everybody's got an opinion about nippers. Some people like to use toenail clippers. Some people like to spend, $300 on a pair of Grateful Dead nippers. These are somewhere on the lower end of that spectrum, but they have replaceable parts, so blades and springs and screws. About once a year, they're going to need to be serviced potentially. You can sharpen blades, you can replace them. It's a nominal investment to replace all the parts, and so depending on how much you're fishing and how good a care you're taking and stuff like that, it's just like little things like pull your nippers out, pull some 6 or 7X tippet out, and see, just make sure it's not going to be something that you do next time you go fishing.
Yeah.
All stuff you could do one cold night when you're don't have anything better to do. So
Yeah, totally.
yeah, in terms of maintenance, I mean that's kind of the first things that come to mind, I think.
Yeah, great. No, that's awesome. We are just about near the end here. I wanted to just give you guys a quick moment to talk about maybe just tease us a couple of the new fly selections that are coming out, because I know that's been a fast growing part of your business, and like we mentioned at the kickoff of the call, I know you'll have some things to show off at the Denver show in just a couple of weeks, but maybe give us just a quick peek into where that's headed, and then we'll jump right into some Q&A.
I'll let Jason talk about the new stuff, but just to kind of give the 30-second overview of our flies, because a lot of people may not realize that we also design and sell our own flies. So these are all patterns that Jason's designed that we've been fishing in Colorado for a long time. Montana Fly Company, MFC, ties them for us, so they're super high quality.
Awesome.
Japanese steel hooks, tungsten beads, and they come in 3-packs. So when's the last time you went to the fly shop and bought a single fly? It's an easy way to sample something. You're going to have one to lose, one to keep, and one to have for next time. So that's kind of the overall overview there. I mean, we have about 29 patterns right now. We do have plans for more stuff, but it's 29 patterns instead of 2,900 patterns at the fly shop. So it's really about simplicity and bringing, I mean, Jason showed you a lot of flies. 90% of those flies are Yakoda flies. Like that's what we're fishing when we're out there. And it's not just for Colorado, it's for the East Coast, it's for the South, the West, we send them all over the place. So it's really about, keeping your selection simple, being confident in the flies. A lot of them are more attractor patterns. Not getting so up in your head about trying to match everything. That's super cool. And, we love to nerd out on that stuff too, and have boxes and midges and stuff. But, sometimes it's nice to have a confidence box that you can grab, where, at least one of the flies that you're fishing is something that you've you've caught a lot of fish with before. So
Totally.
overview of our flies, but Jason can tell you about some of the stuff he's working on.
Yeah, there's I mean, Justin summed it up pretty good. Very intentional collection of mostly nymphs. We have one single dry fly. I don't fish a ton of variations in my dries personally, but I fish a lot of nymphs because most fish are going to eat subsurface. And sure, we all want to watch that fish come up and smack the dry off the surface, but I'm probably going to catch 8 to 10 more of them underneath the surface than I am on top. So
Yeah.
nymphs are super important anywhere that trout live, and you know, a good arsenal of nymphs that kind of covers a myriad of different stages of bug life or different bugs in general is kind of like where my mind goes when I tie flies. I like to take I like to make patterns that can do more than one thing, very much like our products. There's a utilitarian aspect to the flies where you don't have to feel like, oh, I see, you know, betas hatching and I have to fish, you know, a very slimline body beta nymph. And like, you don't. I hate to break it to everyone, but you don't. Most of the time, yes, you will find some selective fish that are going to only need, you know, a natural fly, or at least something that looks like the naturals. Most of the other fish are going to eat what you put in front of them if it's, as long as it's properly placed. So I've got a bunch of fun stuff in the works for us. We're going to actually have more than one dry fly. Big news.
We're gonna have just as many dry flies as we currently have.
We'll have two,
Fantastic.
then we'll have three, and then we'll have four. We're gonna have a handful of new nymphs to add into the collection. We're also gonna have our own streamer offerings, things that have, you know, tweaks of some classic patterns that we found to be very productive, whether it be color or size. And sometimes those subtle differences, though subtle to us, make a big difference for fish, because size does matter to them. And after that, the other thing that I'm really excited to work on, because I've been spending a fair amount of time doing it, is you know, spay fishing. And I think spay flies or intruder style flies in general, most people are of the mindset that you can only use them one way, and that is most certainly not the case. They're typically smaller than most streamers. Mini gongas, if you guys have fished them, or a mini streamer, will outperform a regular size streamer like, you know, 5 to 1 on most days, because when you fish a smaller bait fish pattern, you're not gonna be focused on only the biggest fish in the water system. The smaller mid-sized fish are also going to compete for that food source and be more willing to strike that, and you're just going to have way more fun. So fishing, last I checked, is all about having fun. And
absolutely.
you know, there's plenty of times where we go out and we target big trout intentionally, and there's times we just go out and have some fun and catch anything, you know, decide to bite a stream. So I'd rather laugh and ooh and ah at a fish that I've missed than like stress out that I haven't caught a single fish because I'm fishing something that's too big. And I think that more generalist approach to thinking about what you're going to tie on is more beneficial than being hyper focused on you know, size matters, or size is, you know, a really huge streamer is only going to catch a really huge fish. There's a place for that, and I think most people just want to really enjoy themselves. So
cool. Well, that's all really, really exciting. And I know I've got a bunch of ideas that I'm going to take straight back to my pile of gear that I left in the garage earlier this week. I want to say thank you guys for joining us. This has been a really fun conversation. It's been really cool to get some insight into where your heads are at when you're coming up with these new product designs and features. And just thank you for taking the time this evening. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, it's a pleasure. Thanks for having us.
I know Matt dropped the link in the chat for everyone to take a look at. We are giving away a Yakoda gear pack this evening, and we're going to do a couple of Trout Routes memberships as well. But to enter that giveaway, you need to click on that link in the chat right now and fill out that form so we know how to contact you. And then Matt and I will choose a winner or a few winners for tomorrow. But that grand prize winner is going to be for some Yakoda gear that I'm super jealous I can't enter myself. I'm sure that would get flagged by Matt if he saw me do that. But maybe if you guys just want to touch really quick on what you're going to give away this evening.
Before we do that, the link that we shared with y'all has a 15% discount code. coming up.
Yes,
So if you click
another
on,
excellent point. Yep.
you don't have to do anything else. It should just show up in your cart.
Yeah, that's right. If you scroll up in the chat, that's in there. And then I think we are going to include that in the follow-up email as well, to make sure everyone has access to that.
Yeah, this convertible utility pack could be yours. It's our staple product, like we talked about. It's going to come with one of our utility wallets, a pair of our laces in 72-inch length, and then one of our fly tins, so that you can kind of begin to build your kit.
Fantastic. A perfect upgrade or addition to anyone's kit. Absolutely. So thank you guys for kicking that in this evening. That's really, really great. I know that there have been a couple of questions coming through, and I think Matt's been keeping his eye on those. I'm going to send it back to Matt if he wants to take us through a couple of those questions here to round us out.
Thank you, Eric. Yeah, you guys covered things pretty thoroughly, so we don't have too many questions, which is great since we did just reach the top of the hour. So as a reminder, we did drop that link in, and we will follow up with that that link from earlier that takes you to all of the stuff that was discussed during class, along with that 15% off automatically applied. So make sure you enter that giveaway, but if you don't win, you still get that 15% off automatically applied using that link from earlier as well. So in terms of questions, guys, first one we had was right away in class. You showed off the gear transport in that pretty sick multicolored colorway. We had somebody ask about that one. It doesn't look like it's on the website. Tell us more. Is that one available? Is that one a limited edition that's no longer around? Everyone's jealous.
Vintage. No, it was a limited edition. A couple different times we've done like the Colorado colors, so red, blue, and yellow.
Which you can see in the old streamer stash, red, blue, and then yellow on the inside.
There
But we
it is.
do, I mean, because we make stuff right down the road and we make things in really small batches, when we get a new batch of gear transports made, it's fewer than 100 bags, a lot of times fewer than that. So when we find extra material, or occasionally we'll do a limited edition, color, and people like them. They sell out pretty quickly. We don't make a lot of them. We have some really cool duck camo. This is the multicam.
Oh yeah.
But we have some duck camo convertible packs on the website. Jason can grab one and show them to you. So occasionally our manufacturers will come across some cool material, and we'll jump on it.
This is the material. I'm probably going to break my rod here. Shoot, it's too long. Yeah, this is the duck camo here. This is some old vintage Cordura fabric and really beautiful stuff. It's 1,000 denier, so it's nice and heavy. But this is also something that we haven't talked about, a really cool product that you can use on a strung rod that fits great inside of your rod vault or a riversmith. And normally, like, we're fishing two different rods here in Colorado. We have a nymphing rod, and we typically have a streamer rod, or a dry dropper and a streamer rod. And when you're switching, between setups and you're setting one system down on the ground, like, it's pretty easy to mark up an expensive reel or set it down in the dirt. And it's kind of a bummer. Like, we spend a lot of money on gear, just like everyone, and the last thing we want to do is damage it. So this thing literally is just so simple, with a really nice open area here, so that you can put it on your rod and put it on, and then go on to using whatever's next in your lineup.
I love that. That's great. I often get my lines all tangled up when I'm trying to throw the neoprene sleeve over those reels. So that's really great.
Yeah, we occasionally do some cool limited stuff, and we send out emails and stuff about that. So
cool, awesome. Well, I think I'll have to make sure I got my notifications on, because I peeped that as well. I was like, oh, that is a good color right there. All right, next one is the convertible utility pack waterproof? I know, Jason, that you mentioned something about the zipper that you guys were updating. I wasn't sure if that was with the utility pack or not. So if you want to just cover quickly if that utility pack is waterproof.
It's not waterproof in the sense that we think of a submersible pack, right? So it doesn't have a waterproof zipper, which again is going to add typically like $50 to $100 to the price of the product. X-Pack by definition is a 4-ply waterproof material, but the pack's traditionally sewn. So if you dunk it in the water, it's going to get wet, but the water's going to drain out of it. Like I said earlier, if you dunk your waterproof pack in the water and you don't realize it, you know, you might come back to your pack a few minutes later and realize it's full of water. So, you know, we've fished hundreds of days out of these packs. They've gotten wet. Our fly boxes have gotten damp. It's not a problem. You know, we're making continuous improvements to kind of, you know, upgrade that, but it's like I said earlier, it's not really a focus. We have some stuff in the works, right? You just get into different manufacturing typically. A lot of the waterproof packs, most of the ones you guys are thinking of are RF welded, which is typically a process that happens overseas. And it results in a pack that's got more of like a sort of form to it and not as much organization on the inside because you can't sew pockets and stuff into it. So a lot of times if you RF welded pack or a backpack with the big rubber zipper on it, you're going to notice there's not a lot of storage in there because of the way it's constructed. So there's trade-offs with with everything, you know.
The material itself though, like, I mean, I fished in downpours with this thing.
It's like wearing a rain jacket.
Yeah, it
you know?
really doesn't pick up water. Like there's been a time I've gone swimming and yes, it took water on, but it was pretty minimal. The newer zipper makes a huge difference. The other one was like a sieve, like water just goes right through that thing. But this reverse coil that has kind of a plasticine or rubberized coating on it. And normally like, right, this is where water is going to hit right on your chest if you're wearing it that way, or if it's on your back as a hip pack, same thing. Water doesn't go in through that zipper seam. So the cloth one that we originally started out using definitely got damper than this one does.
For sure. The next question we had that came in was just, could you guys show off you might not have it in arm's reach, which totally fair, would be the net holder.
Yeah. Show it off. Show it how it's used.
Yeah, I think just some utilization of it. I think the person just seemed interested in kind of just learning more about the net holder that you guys offer.
Yeah, so net holders themselves are, from what I've seen and the ones that we've tested out ourselves, they're a real big pain in the ass to put on. And we were like, let's make this simple and easy for people. So in the back of it, we made this super simple, very high-tech adjustment. We just used Velcro so that if you want to use this thing, sorry, you're gonna see my butt here for a second. Literally, all I have to do is undo it and pass it through. Oh, my jacket's away. Pass it through my belt, and it can be on in seconds versus like having to take your belt off, thread it through, put your waders back in, which then requires like another level of threading. And then when you unzip your waders to go take a leak and your net's still in there, like everything just falls right off. Like this just stays in place. So very simple design, but it's awesome. I mean, there's really nothing on here that can fail. So it's, you know, kind of our motto, like with how we design things, is just kind of keep things simple.
It's a lot like the reel cover. I mean, it looks like a reel cover, you know, but it's got one feature built into it to keep your line from kinking.
Yeah.
But, you know, you don't want to break your reel, and when you store it, you don't want to take your reel cover off and have it kink in your line because of the memory. So, you know, this thing is really all about just ease of use. On the backpack, off the backpack, on your waders, off the waders, without a bunch of messing with your belt and stuff. So one of the simplest things we made.
Again, you can see like the bright colors in the reel cover. Like if you have reels in your pack, really easy to see this, which is kind of the whole point of using brighter colors with our reel covers.
For sure, right on. Next one is do you have a sling pack that would be for someone who's left-handed? I don't know if the sliding capability of it might be different depending on what handed you are. It seemed like there might be some question around that.
We're both left-handed.
Well, there we go. Same here.
Sling pack.
Yeah.
I can grab this thing, I can still pull it around and still use kind of the sliding strap. This is the third way that this can be used, right? Super simple. But yeah, sling pack.
Right on.
The belt's cut extra long so that you can use it in this way.
I knew I liked you guys, and now finding out that you're both left-handed, it all makes sense. It all makes sense. We had a question come in, I think, just in reference to the waterproofing. Just have you guys ever tried waxing the packs just to see how that does within terms of the material you use or anything like that?
Going to be as waterproof as like a wax canvas because I mean, X-Pack is a 4-ply, completely waterproof material.
Cool.
So when you start sewing it though, right, you're literally poking holes, tiny holes into it. And when you don't put a waterproof zipper, so taping seams is one thing, one thing that we've considered. We just don't, we're in some pretty wild weather, snow, heavy, wet snow, waiting. We don't get in up to our, past our waist a lot. I don't think a lot of people do, but certainly you're going to step in some water that's deep sometimes. It just, our motto is like, get out there and use this stuff. And if there's a huge pain point for us, we feel like it's going to be a big pain point for somebody else. And we just haven't experienced that enough for it to be an issue, to be honest with you.
Sweet.
So.
Sweet. Next one is in reference just to the sizing of the mud pad within the transport pack. Is it kind of similar to the Sims Taco size, or how can you guys kind of show off sizing of that?
It's I forget the dimensions, but it's 2 feet long by 16 inches tall, so definitely large enough to stand on.
Yeah,
It's
right.
footprint in the bag, so you can stand in the bag and take your waders off straight into the bag.
One thing that's super cool that we didn't talk about the gear transport is that if you do travel a fair amount, in an airplane to go to a destination to fish, the gear transport folds super flat in your luggage. And when you get to your destination, then you have a huge carry-all to manage your gear, when you go fishing. Really, really nice benefit of, a real simple design.
Awesome. Right on. Well, last couple ones that we had come in here. Looks like John asked, John, how do you get your 15% discount? John, I can post that link in the chat here again quickly before we jump off. And then that will, like we mentioned, will be in the follow-up email that everyone will get tomorrow, which will not only include the link to all of the products that we talked about tonight with that 15% discount, but also a link to the recording of tonight as well. So you can have reference to that. So we'll make sure you get that link, John. And then, looks like one last one came in before we'll cut off questions is how much larger is the STS stash versus the streamer stash?
Let me grab one.
Sec. Good question.
While you do that, I'm going to post that link.
The STS stack is kind of like an alternative streamer storage. It's going to hold fewer streamers, but it's actually, it was co-developed with Dave up at Emerald Water Anglers, which anybody who lives in the Pacific Northwest is going to know him. He's a big steelhead fisherman. So it's kind of got dual purpose for steelhead salmon fishermen that need to store extra, like shooting heads and stuff like that.
So, yeah. So when this thing is folded up, like size wise, let's say it's a third bigger. When you open it up, it's significantly bigger. This, right, the STS is for salmon, trout, steelhead, kind of a design that was made for people who are swinging flies versus stripping them. Although, you can use this thing however you see fit. So there's space in here to hold different weighted heads or different tapered leaders if you wish. There's a zipper pocket in here that you can stick some spare flies into, or extra tippet or leaders. And then just like the streamer stash, this thing also kind of has like the baseball mitt factor, so that you can stick your finger in here, and if I want that fly, like I can poke my finger under it and pop it up. You can see it kind of lift it, and then I just pull that fly right out. There's nothing, what's super cool about shearling wool is it's just the weave of the wool, the follicles of the animal that create the grip for your flies. There's nothing that we do to it. It's just by virtue of it being, very thick and coarse, hooks grab into it and they release it real easily as well. If you try and use like loop that's used for Velcro, that's where you're typically going to bend those hooks because that stuff doesn't release naturally, right, like this stuff does. Cool. And as Justin mentioned, it's antimicrobial. And with it being white, it's a nice contrast color, so they see things on top of it quite well.
Yeah. Excellent.
STS is killer. This is all I use when I'm swinging. I literally just stick it in my waders and that's it. And then the back of it, there's an area to throw a pair of our mitten clamps, so that if I need to unhook a fish or I need to trim line. There, you know, the scissor side of the forceps itself will cut anything that I need to. So great, simple product, but man, it's awesome on the water.
Yeah, I'll be picking up one of them at the Denver Fly Show for sure.
Charge you
All
double.
right. So not two questions here, just a couple shout outs that I want to make sure I passed along to you guys. One was just a shout out for making hats that fit large heads. I know I got
Oh,
a buddy
yeah.
who appreciates that as well. Sounds like Justin might be the reason for the larger hats.
Yeah.
He's our hat genie.
Yeah,
There
we
we
just,
go.
yeah, I have a big head and a lot of our hats don't fit me. So we have one particular style that was designed for that purpose. And we just actually, a bunch of our new hats that are all sorted, they have a little tag in the product photo that says larger fit. So
Nice.
need more stuff for my fellow big-headed folks out there.
Love it. And then another one here, just shouting you guys out for your customer service. They said they ordered a pair of nippers that didn't cut quite right, communicated with you guys and you replaced them right away, and they love their nippers that they've got. So just another shout out.
Yeah, I mean, we appreciate that. Not everything is going to be perfect, but we try to stand behind our stuff. And you know, if you have any questions, I'm Justin at Yakoda Supply, Jason at yakodasupply.com. You can call us at the shop. You can send us a DM on Instagram. You can text us if you sign up for our text. I literally, you know, text people back and we'll have conversations about fishing and stuff. So
Yeah.
All right. I know I cut off questions here, but all of our good buddy RJ Hosking snuck in one last one that I got to get in. Who's the better angler?
Hey.
better angler. I mean, Jason's a pretty fishy dude. Anybody that's fished with him would know that. But like always, I mean, like depends on the day. But you know,
There we go.
That is days for sure.
I like it. That's a good answer. That's a good answer. Well, thank you guys again. I know Eric thanked you both for joining us, but I want to say thank you again. So thank you for all of those of you who out there who joined us tonight as well. We had an awesome time. I know I learned a lot. I know I've already got a whole list of things I need to add to some sort of list. I don't know if I'm going to be buying all these things, but maybe I'll ask my fiance or something. Who knows? You know, we'll get them all. We'll get them all. But
That's
I appreciate you.
time on the water better is really what it comes down to. And you know, the things that we've made are cater for kind of our needs, and we think for a lot of other people, but you might have some stuff already that you can get some great use out of. So maybe just look at it a little bit differently and use what you got versus having to spend more money on more stuff. Like that certainly is the American way, but it makes me a little sick too.
I like it. What a good way to finish. All right. Well, thank you guys. Thank you everyone again who joined us. We will see you all in the next class.
All right.
Take care.
Thank you, guys.